you check the children? Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hello and welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Jaime and Fuego.
Robert the Wolfman here, and we are back with another Patron request, courtesy of Seth T. Miller.
Yes, our
Yes,
resident
good
werewolf
sir.
aficionado.
Yes, and we are back with Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf.
I knew there was a subtitle. I was just trying to remember what the hell it was.
Yeah, starring Nick Demichi from the Stakeland movies, if you have seen those. If you haven't, go check those out.
Looking drastically different from those vampy flicks.
Yeah,
if I
well, that's the
remember
thing, though,
correctly.
too,
Yeah.
because he's supposed to be playing an older character, so they did make up him to be an older gent and everything.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the Stakeland movies. Crucify me in the comments. if
get
that's
on
the
that,
case.
man.
Yeah. I know there's two of them, but
Yeah.
I have heard good things. But him branching off into the full moon sort of fears.
Indeed, and also we have Ethan Embry in this, and then
Can't hardly wait.
yeah.
And also Devil's Candy.
Oh, Devil's
Probably
Candy,
what
thank
he's
you.
most
Yeah.
notably
Oh no,
known
Can't
for
Hardly
lately.
Wait though. You know,
I love Can't Hardly Wait.
Like that's a
dude.
'90s staple. You know, everyone loves
Yeah.
that movie.
Yeah.
And then obviously,
If you love Barry Manilow, you
yeah,
give
you
him a call
know,
and let him
Mandy,
know.
Mandy. Yeah,
Yeah, totally different movie, also great. But we're going on tangents. It tends to happen.
and then also starring Tom Noonan. Also, if you guys have seen Monster Squad, he played Frankenstein in that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm alluding on other stuff that he's
That
done.
was the preacher guy, right? The one who
Yes.
shared some.
Yes,
some
he was
smokes
he
with
was
a
the
couple
preacher.
times.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know why I was thinking that. Well, anyway, totally off bases. There was another actor I thought he was, but thank you for the clarification.
Got you, bro.
Yeah, man. But so late phases. I watched.
Real quick.
I watched this last night, man, for the first time, and I never had before. You had seen this
Yes.
upon its initial 2014 release. Cecil had as well. Cecil is having a kid, so that's why you got both of us doing this for all of you patrons and stuff. And it's like this week, happening. You start out with some werewolfiness, but it takes a while to get to the third act where we have some serious werewolfiness. And so for that reason, as much as I really was enamored with our lead's performance, by the time it finally got to the werewolf stuff, for me it was a little too late. Okay. But I still appreciated some of it. Most notably, this blind veteran, 20 plus years, Marine Corps
Army vet.
or like
Army vet.
Army vet, different branch, obviously. Sorry, vets, for not having that clarification possible. But man, he owns this movie.
No,
in
most
every
definitely.
possible capacity, in every scene that he is in. Embry is decent, and some of the women who mess with him, and they're like, yeah, he's like, running around attacking dogs and getting on my
the snooty
Well, it's like the bridge club, kind of
in a
like
sense,
older women at the local church and stuff like that. But basically, his performance, guy from Stakeland, as you mentioned,
Nick Deshimi.
Deshimi makes this movie and just the strange, enigmatic in some ways performance that he puts together. Everybody else is not so memorable, but just. I almost got some Silver Bullet vibes in the fact that just having a disabled person trying to go against a werewolf or possibly more than one, I found that intriguing. And so no, I didn't hate this movie or anything, but I felt like it could have been a lot better. It was still enjoyable though. So how about you, man?
I enjoyed this movie more on my second watch, and I actually rewatched it last night as well.
Okay.
And everything.
Two first.
Exactly, yeah. And like Fuego said, I had originally watched this when it was first released, and I still thoroughly enjoyed it and everything. And that's like I said earlier, Stakeland is where I was introduced to Nick Demichi and everything. I hope I'm saying his name right.
Yeah, I had never seen him in anything before.
Yeah, because
this
it was
the first time for me.
He was in some smaller roles and everything, and it was Stakeland, and then this, and then Stakeland 2, and a couple other things. But no, personally, I thoroughly still enjoy this movie. My biggest gripe, like I was talking with you off camera earlier, was some of the effects.
Yeah.
Acting wise, I didn't feel like we really had anyone that shortchanged it, anyone that fell light versus anyone else. Obviously, our main character and everything,
it's alluding
something
to,
McKinley.
that's fine.
Yeah, I know something McKinley. Anyways, he did fantastic in this movie because again, it was about him. It was about basically a blind veteran and his dog and whatnot. But all in all, real quick on just overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It's not going to be for every werewolf fan, just because, and we'll delve on that too when we get to the effects wise. But for story wise and just that the man and his dog kind of story, that's where I fell in love with this kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, which I can totally feel too. I mean, just that canine connection. I mean, my father being a breeder of German shepherds and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I can feel that, man.
And quick shout out to our pupper in there, Shadow, played by Raina. The beautiful puppers.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So real quick, we're gonna jump into the story. Yeah. So it takes place of Ambrose McKinley. That is our character's name. So it takes place of him and then his son, played by Ethan Embry.
I get a back east vibe from most of them from the accents.
Did you? A wee bit and everything. Yeah. This is definitely like Midwest kind of setting. Really? It seems
you think
like.
So? I mean, maybe based on the locale, but I mean, there was just more so that like. I mean, maybe it's more of like that old school Italian kind of vibe to
maybe, well, especially
like
with the Mishi's character and everything like that, and how he talked and everything.
Yeah.
Because he might actually be Italian.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
I'm not entirely sure. You know.
But anyways, so upon Ambrose moving into this retirement community, his neighbor is attacked by a beast, and upon that same night, he is attacked along with his dog. And his dog sadly is killed during this attack. And key thing to keep in mind is that he's blind. Yeah, so he is a blind veteran, so he's doing all this by hearing and smell, honestly, because it's already been proven that once with a lot of people that are blind, your hearing and your smell sensitivity increases tenfold. Exponentially, yeah. Very similar to a dog in that, right? Dogs still have their sight, but they rely most heavily on their sound and sense
their
and smell.
Yeah.
Yep. And so basically, after those events, it takes place with him basically getting ready for the second wave of the attack and everything a month later. And that's really the short and sweet of it and everything of the story. Yeah. Without going too heavy into spoilers, because again, with this story, it's easy to give out the entire movie in the plot.
Truly, and that's what you want to have, that uncertainty as opposed to what the threat and the extent of it all could be. Scripting, that's where the film really dragged heavily for me. I mean, it did expand and develop our lead character significantly, but aside from some of his interactions with that that preacher, pastor,
Tom
priest,
Noonan.
Whatever he may be, because I don't know what denomination it was, and they have different distinctions as a kid who grew up Baptist, but I know there's preachers, there's priests, there's pastors, there's different names going on with that.
I think they called him the pastor in there.
Okay. Yeah. Aside from just some of their palaver, as I like to say, and just their discussions about regret and loss and just like dealing with PTSD, which obviously somebody having spent 20 plus years in that sort of combat, and been a Vietnam vet as he also was too. Those were some of the best scenes as far as just when there was just sitting and a couple actors talking, and being a big Kevin Smith fan, I love when there's actors just having great dialogue, great chemistry, energy between the two of them. Those scenes are great. But there's others where he's like being ridiculed on like the short bus, like the shuttle, and some of that stuff. There's a lot of drag in the middle of this movie, but then the third act like kicks into high gear like a motherfucker, and that's where we really kind of become the werewolf movie that I was wanting it to be. And I guess that is probably a good segue. I actually want to talk about like effects even before the action.
Yeah, no, let's jump right into the effects. Yeah, if you want to start up on that and everything.
Yeah. There is one pretty cool transformation scene as we are segueing into the third act.
Our transformation scene?
Yeah, exactly. The only one that we really get.
The only one we get,
yeah. And even when we get a sight of said creature at the beginning of the movie, as you mentioned, I feel like it wasn't even so much the Jaws situation, it was more so they were like kind of holding back on their budget to when they finally made the full reveal in the back half of the movie, which from budgetary constraints, this is obviously a small, little indie movie. It makes sense, to not just put all your cards down right away and to just really go for it in the back half. Once we finally got to it, I liked some aspects of the design of our werewolves as we finally get to them, but I felt like the ears protruded too much. It was almost like some of those weird little like foxes where the ears are like taller than the heads and stuff like that.
Well, and like I mentioned to you earlier and everything off camera, it's if you guys have seen Graveyard Shift, basically it was like the it's the bat rat thing is basically what they personally looked like.
Yeah, we're talking droopy ears, but then they in turn do like flick up at certain points, and it just looks kind of silly, and especially based on some of the ferocious, fearsome stuff that's going on, and we do get some like kind of carnage. I mean, not like a major amount in the third act, but I mean,
again, it just goes like they obviously they didn't have a large budget, but they utilized it well enough for what they knew they could. Yeah.
I feel like there was like a temperance and like a very calculated positioning, which even if I didn't love the design, dude, I've seen way worse designs of werewolves in films and stuff, especially ones that they did linger on them. If we're gonna talk about the like
marsupials,
actual like which I haven't watched any of those sequels, so I can't comment on that.
Don't even worry about those.
Yeah, that was the one in Australia, right? The third Howling movie. Yeah, although although something on the back cover with like the weird little like head whatever coming out of the woman in bed with the other guy, like that. It was
that was a dream sequence and everything.
It was a photo on the back of the VHS, and I saw that as a kid at the VHS at the Superstar Video, and it gave me nightmares. Like
the only picture in that movie that'd ever give anyone nightmares.
Yeah, well, I saw that still as a kid, and I had nightmares about like being in a hospital and a birthing that was something to that weird degree. But anyway, we're talking about late phases, guys.
This fucking guy.
yeah, that's my bad. But the camera did linger. As opposed to those initial like quick cuts shots and stuff like that, the camera lingered on these werewolves a lot more so than I was expecting in the end of this film, and I think maybe that did work to its detriment, unfortunately, because you can scrutinize the design so much more so when the camera hangs there.
Exactly, and my biggest thing too, it's like and again, I was talking with you about this off camera and whatnot. When we actually got to our initial transformation, it was actually pretty kick-ass. Yeah. Until the very ending of the final full transformation reveal. And that goes back to like again, as I said earlier, if you guys have seen Graveyard Shift and you know that bat rat thing I'm talking about.
Yep, it's a hybrid.
That's basically what this looked like right here. That's basically what it looked like. Like body wise, I could have been fine with the bodysuit and everything. Yeah. But the biggest thing was just the facial structure of the werewolves.
Yeah, which is where, especially when they're moving, it really looked like bodysuits. Especially with like a wide shot. Like if it's like close up, that's fine. But when they pulled out from further back and it was like the scampering sort of thing. That's where it really looked like just a.
Well, there was a couple scenes and everything when they went to quadrupedal. And everything running through the streets. Those were actually shot pretty decently. Okay. Personally.
So then is that like on all fours, like the scampering kind of thing?
Because typically they're bipedal and everything like that. It's like when they're jumping up through the window and everything getting at them. And
that's where there's like different interpretations, obviously, of what, a lichen, a werewolf, whatever classification, it may be. Is it more humanoid? Is it more like a wolf? Yeah. In that comparison.
Honestly, I like it when they bounce between a little bit of both. Like, it's cool, you have them walking bipedal because they are part man, part beast. Like,
and that's it. And where that kind of internal struggle makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then, like, when you're quadrupedal and everything, you're more in tune to the actual wolf side of things. Yeah. And they actually, so real quick and everything, Cecil, shut up, I don't want to hear this. So basically, they go into that on this book series called High Moor. Yeah. And everything. And basically, so they're called Moonstruck. Moonstruck, they're ones that are bipedal. They're caught between the half man and half wolf.
So
and they're more of just over that. Yeah, they're more rage and pain, and that's where you have your ferocity of your werewolves.
It should make sense and because you don't have that like you're adjusted.
Exactly, and then you have your quadrupedal, which is you still think like how you and I would right now, but you're in a body of you're a giant fucking wolf and whatnot. And
so is there like a blood distinction of what bites you that makes that happen.
To a point, yeah. So basically, it's just that controlling and coming to grasp with the spirit of the beast that's growing inside of you for that full moon.
Okay,
so
because I know, like, even with lichens, for instance, like, can't they change at will? It doesn't even have to be like a moon.
To a point, yeah, and that's more
situation,
so with
depending on the lore.
the lore is the biggest aspect of it.
It's the same with vampires. It's like, oh, can vampires be killed by a beheading or by garlic or by all this other stuff? And there's others that like really relinquish it down to just a couple specific.
Yeah, and that's one thing I liked about these books of that Kai Moore and everything is basically like the whole because they called them Moonstruck. Like I said, they're caught between that half man and half beast.
Yeah.
So they had no distinction of good or bad, kill or don't kill kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's one thing I like when they kind of play with the werewolf aspect like that.
Knowledge dropping, man. Oh yeah.
All right, so to double back really quick on just like some little tidbits on the acting. Again, going back with like Paul Noonan. I don't know why I keep calling him Paul Noonan, but
you're thinking Paul Newman.
Probably, Tom.
Generational.
Tom Noonan and everything, who played our priest and everything. For what little scenes that we did have of him, it was nice, especially going back to what you were talking about with the banter between him and Nick Demichi and everything, just on both their dark past and everything. Because even in there, the pastor, he talks about how he used to steal and rob and things like that, and then Demichi's character of the things he's done in Vietnam. So it's like those two little tie-ins back together, and that chemistry was really nice. And even for his little Noonan's preacher helper, whatever way you want to call him, and everything.
We have some revelations about him later on.
Yeah,
obviously.
But it was nice and everything, because even during those later scenes, like
where he was driving him to church.
Well, not even just that and everything. The final confrontation between him and Noonan and everything. He's basically explaining. He's like, I found it and everything, but it got to me, kind of thing. He's like, I was trying to protect everybody. I was trying to do the right thing. Like those little lines and how they're delivered will make or break those little tidbits in your story and your characters. Yeah, those are big primos or big flaws personally. And it just becomes very character centric in the middle of it. In comparison with like the setup we get in the first 15 maybe 20 minutes, because it's very heavy with the father and son dynamic. It is, and
that's where, as much as I love Embry, I was expecting like maybe a little bit more from him in this, but I feel like he didn't necessarily lack in the performance. It was that he just wasn't as much of a part of it.
He just didn't have enough big
a
role
major
written
impactful factor. So because he's a guy that Devil's Candy. If you haven't seen Devil's Candy, he really just surprised me. He's done some work on The Walking Dead. He's done a few things beyond 1997 Can't Hardly Wait romantic teen comedy.
His old 90s stuff and everything. But no, it's funny, you bring up the Devil's Candy and whatnot, and I saw him in that, and at first when I started watching it, I didn't realize it was Ethan Embry.
Oh, because the hair and the beard.
Not even that, but he's thickened up. Yeah. Since back in the day,
he bulked up.
Yeah.
And that came out after this, so he was.
That did actually. Yeah.
Yeah, there was 18, 2000,
something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, great movie by the way. But he was just underutilized. He's good in the few scenes that we have with him. His love interest, his wife that he's thinking of leaving his father to go move away with after putting him in this retirement community.
Yeah, because she wants to be closer to her family.
Because there's a revelation about why she would want that to be the case. Without spoiling stuff significantly, but yeah, really at the end of the day, the two performances that wowed me the most were our pastor preacher, as I mentioned, and also just the checks and balances between him and our blind veteran lead, and just coming from dark pasts, trying to make some sort of the understanding and acceptance about all the bad stuff that they've done before, and maybe find that last few things that can give their life meaning, and that can kind of just give them resolve and solidarity, sanctity, peace, whatever you want to call it.
And one thing I will say about this, and it probably touches on more so on the pacing that you were talking about. I like the fact that they didn't do this as your typical werewolf movie is you have 4 full moons in one damn month. Yeah. Kind of thing. It was
a 1-to-1, right?
This is a 1-to-1. This happened. It happened the night he moved in, to a month later. Yeah. And this is the in between month of him preparing teaching himself to learn his house and his routine and everything. Is like he's blind.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do on your own if you're blind.
Yeah, although he pretty much figures out
Oh,
and
yeah.
acclimates pretty well. I mean, as you
He's
would
a
expect.
badass.
Yeah, as you would expect, somebody especially military trained and with that sort of affliction, they will adapt.
It's that
as
discipline.
need be. Yeah.
It goes back down to that discipline.
And that's what allows for the perceptiveness and
Mm-hmm.
for it to even, because he's even in, on guns at one particular point, man, which was where it got a little outlandish for me, but nonetheless.
That's not true though,
I
because
know,
I've
'cause of
seen
the
blind people
sound.
shoot and everything.
Yeah.
But again, though, it wasn't necessarily he was just like he's going off of sound.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing.
Which is where I gave it a pass in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But
there was times he missed.
Mhm.
He missed
Oh, yeah.
before he hit. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not like they're just
Definitely
giving
did.
him the shots.
Yeah, and as a final thought too, I do second your notion in the fact that they didn't draw it out too much over like moon after moon after moon.
Mm-hmm.
Because as much as I love Cycle of the Werewolf, which was adapted in the Silver Bullet, Stephen King, takes place over a whole year.
Yeah, and it's
kinda
very
gimmicky
caught up,
gimmicky in that
so,
regard.
yeah.
It's just like one incident, another, and another. Very serialized in that regard. This was much more condensed and contained and intimate as far as werewolf stuff goes, especially so much coming from his perspective.
And I definitely
Hardly.
feel like this is one of those movies because, like, again, I'm sure I've said it, they've said it, numerous people have said it. Werewolf movies are one of the harder ones to get right.
Yeah.
And everything. And when you when you have a script and your final product, you know what it's supposed to be, and the product knows what it is, you're gonna have a better result at the end.
I think it's probably why they make less of them too, because of the fact that like werewolves compared to like a vampire or a zombie, there's a lot more that has to go into
Exactly,
the
yeah.
making of the character.
Like,
It's
don't get me wrong.
Oh, fangs, or like some some. I mean, fake blood and green whatever, and some silicone latex
Yeah,
or whatever.
and like don't get me wrong,
that's
there's
all.
a lot of like really crappy werewolf movies. I'm looking at
I'm
you.
sure you've seen a lot.
I'm
of
looking
them.
at you, Bonehill Road. Looking at you, buddy.
Haven't seen it.
Don't do it.
Don't intend on
It's
it.
fucking crap.
Too
And,
much other stuff.
and like, okay, and this is one of those kind of little tidbits. It goes back to whole like Photoshop. So, like, I love Photoshop. I used to do it for hours and do it for work and everything.
Helpful.
And you look at some of these posters for these movies and you watch even the trailer. It's in the sense of that reverse like judging a book by its cover kind of thing. It's like, oh, this movie looks like it's gonna be badass. You put it in,
Yeah.
it's a goddamn snooze fest.
Well, that was unfortunately the whole VHS aspect too back in the day, and the fact that you pick a movie based on the awesomeness of the cover and
Tremors
all
is a
too
prime
often-
example. With that cover and everything, that cover was marketed more as a horror, with it being actual comedic horror and everything, and that goes too. They didn't know how to market that damn movie.
Yeah, you would often encounter stuff that looked super fearsome and did not, shell it out. But
Yeah.
I will definitely say that this one, it was at least a different take on the werewolf lore as far as just the
It was
angle
refreshing.
with the older guy and everything. And so for that reason, yeah, man, I can definitely recommend it, even if I didn't love it and I wasn't over the moon with it. That's probably over the moon.
He's
with it.
over the moon.
Yeah, I wasn't over the moon for it, the full moon, but yeah, despite its problems, I still found it enjoyable, and I think more so if you are big into this subgenre of horror, definitely needs to be checked out. It's free on Tubi right now.
Voodoo.
Voodoo. Is it on Voodoo?
Sorry, guys. Yes,
I thought it
Voodoo.
was Wolves that was on, because I just watched it on Tubi last night.
No, Wolves is on Tubi. Wolves is on Voodoo. This is on Prime.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, guys.
Figure it out.
Yeah,
It's called Late Phases.
Yeah.
There you go.
Figure it out.
Yes.
All right, guys. But yeah, thank you again. Thank you, Seth. Look forward to some of your other patrons.
Seti
Yes.
And yes, if you want to become a Horror Show patron, you have the link in the description below. These always start out on the patron page, and then they initially, make the scamper over. They migrate to the main YouTube channel as well. So like, share, subscribe. We greatly appreciate the support. And until next time, I've been Jaime and Fuego.
I'm Robert the Wolfman.
And until next time, stay
Stay scared.
Ow!